Very good. All right, people. We measure time by cycle ages, and the gate to every age we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. This is Sharif ANAEL-BEY. We are back with you, and I am with my esteemed big brother, colleague, and friend, Allen Greenfield.
Salam alaikum.
See you. Good to see you again, brother, man. So, listen, I got a lot of great feedback from the last time we talked, and on the last interview, a lot of good feedback. And one of the things that a lot of people have been asking about, of course, now, this whole term disclosure. And now disclosure is literally the new it's the term and kind of the buzz around it is kind of like the new second coming. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's really weird. What are your thoughts?
He hadn't come back yet, but any day, bro, he's coming back. Okay, well, maybe so, but it isn't today, and probably won't be tomorrow. Just the odds, statistically. Well, disclosure. I don't know. Maybe I'm not the oldest ufologist. I think that honor at this point probably belongs to Gene Steinberg. I don't know, or Rick Hilberg, but I don't think anybody who is a veteran ufologist takes the notion of disclosure seriously for two reasons. One is if there's disclosure, meaning the government revealing their pickled alien bodies or whatever it is.
Right.
And they don't know nothing. I mean, I know more and you know more than they know. And that's because their interest is really mostly in preserving the confidentiality of secret weapons development. That's what Area 51 is. This recent U.S. raid on the Houthis in the Yemen, that's going to do any more good than the Saudis bombing them to extinction for 10 years. Anyway, they sent B-1 bombers, which are very advanced devices. They'll go all over the world without refueling, and they will carry enough nuclear weapons to destroy Asia, which is probably the point they were trying to make. But you can't see them. They fly way above where, but in any case, the government's interest is in that and Chinese balloons. That's the way it's been all along. And they've pretty well said that. Yes. They don't think that we're being invaded by extraterrestrials, let alone ultra-terrestrials, which they've never heard of. They don't employ a bunch of quantum physicists to figure that out. The closest they've ever come was the program at SRI to look at distant spying.
Yes.
and apparently killing goats by mental powers alone. Which, being a vegan, I go, no, don't kill the goats. Kill each other.
That's right.
So they don't know anything, and so they don't know anything, and they don't care about whether because they dismiss it or they don't think it's important, or if there's something alien going on, we'll find out. You don't need the government to disclose it when they obliterate Kansas City. Shout out to you folks in Kansas City. Evacuate! No, just kidding. That would be Kansas City, Kansas. Here I come.
Here I go. That's right.
Because you got crazy little women there. Okay, leave it alone. I don't think you can say that anymore in these woke times. Woke?
Not these days. Exactly. Wow. Yeah. So it's the whole, I've talked with a number of other people about this whole disclosure thing, and more and more, they're more along the lines of disclosure, and that idea of disclosure is hijacked as has been pretty much hijacked as a means of further control.
Oh yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, you were asking before the program why my latest book is about the Black Lodge and not something else, and I said because we live in dark times. There are things that are going on that I feel need to be zeroed in on, not
Mm.
because they are the secret chiefs of the Third Order or bodhisattva, different terms for basically the ascended masters. That's what the Theosophists call them, having
Yes.
been kicked out of the HBL, but that's another story. Don't show up at my door. So, in any
Right.
case, I think that QAnon is funded directly by the Black Lodge, which
Ooh.
has trillions of dollars. I mean, before, let's say in pre-modern times, what they seem to have done mostly is they being discarnate. They hire incarnate people of low repute. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Everything from mafiosi to mercenaries
Mm.
to kidnap people, to take them to, well, Shaver would have said the caves, I
The
think,
caves.
to
Yeah.
their own dimensions. I think the
Yes.
two things are one and the same, really.
Right.
And in order to be slaves, sex slaves, or to eat them because they are
Right.
cannibalistic.
Right.
So that sounds like a Black Lodge front. By your
Mm.
fruits ye shall be known. And let me tell you,
Right.
they sound like they're also trying to make fools of the people that believe them.
Got,
So
gotcha.
they are, I can't prove it, but I know it's true.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. And there's a lot of that. And I know some of the people who are very sincere about the disclosure thing,
Yes.
but, but, I think they're being suckered in some second-hand or third-hand way by the Black Lodge, who
Mm.
wants to confuse and disillusion. And the reason I'm able to say that is I go back far enough to remember Project Blue Book when it was a real project.
Mm.
And I go back far enough to remember what they did when they supposedly stopped investigating, which is
Mm.
they farmed it out to the University of Colorado, which way after the fact, which they had a massive volume that had some good cases and some good investigations in it. But their bottom
Right.
line was, there's nothing to this. Keep on moving, people. Nothing here. Nothing to see.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was headed by uh, Edward U. Condon,
Mm.
a person who of mixed repute, we shall say.
Got you.
And the conclusion was uh, predicted.
Predicted.
It was inevitable because long after a memo that came from inside uh, the Condon group that
Yeah.
solicited the contract from the Air Force, the
Mm-hmm.
probably quite lucrative contract,
Yes.
said
Yes.
something to the effect, and I'm not quoting it directly, but the actual memo is online for anyone to see. It says, the trick will be, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but I'm very close to the original. The trick will be to seem to be a disinterested group of scientists who are investigating, but reluctantly arrive at the conclusion that there's nothing to this.
Mm.
And that became a big deal in ufology in the late 1960s. But ufologists, like the rest of the American public, is notorious for having short memories. And
Yes.
the fact is that it's an active living memory for me, but for the people that are in the disclosure movement who are mostly Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen whatever comes after Z.
Right.
We're
Right.
moving to a different alphabet now. Z
Yeah.
plus one, and they just don't have the background and haven't bothered to get the background to know
Right.
this has happened before, not just once. I mean, if I want to go back to the 1953 CIA panel, which said disrupt private organizations that
Mm.
deal with UFOs because, well, they just called them flying saucers back then. The evil Soviet Union will infiltrate private UFO groups and create an artificial flap so we can send our bombers in and nuke
Right.
nuke Washington. And in 1947, you go back to that, same thing happened. The presiding general said, well, there are credible cases, but there's nothing to it.
Brother, let me tell you what, especially for those of us that are not as agedly experienced, that
How's that,
sounds.
Sonny? How's that? Listen, here at the home, we have an expression: no pain, no gain. Okay.
Let me tell you, but what you just gave is value. It's priceless because that sounds like what happened with ATIP.
Exactly.
Exactly what happened with ATIP, and it's like everybody's on pins and needles and on the edge of their seat, like, ooh, it's coming, and exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and I'm not confining it to my area of expertise. I do have some, I like to think, broader knowledge of things. And I see the Black Lodge at work in disinformation in many different arenas for
Yes.
their own sinister purposes. And that's why I wrote my most recent book, because knowledge is antiseptic for those types of activities.
So, for the sake of new listeners or people not familiar with your work and some of these other things, can you briefly talk about the Black Lodge? What it is, what you believe it to be, what your research has shown, these things.
Okay, I could try. It's a long process. I'll first have to talk about the secret chiefs of the Third Order, which is what they're
Correct.
called generally in magical circles, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing as the Ascended Masters in Theosophy,
Right.
or the Nine Unknown, or any number of different terminologies.
In my religious organ, in the Moorish Science Temple of America, we call it the Royal Council of the Silent Brotherhood.
Same thing, but yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
And it is essentially those, almost said beings,
Yeah.
persons who have reached the point which they have the option of transcending their human identity and becoming essentially immortal beings who have chosen, like the bodhisattvas in Buddhism,
Yeah.
to not go into the ultimate positive absolute, as Charles Fort called it, but to remain in a state where they can help humanity so that, as they put it in Buddhism, all sentient beings come to enlightenment. Now, you can translate that. That's what it would be in Pali or Sanskrit. It would be different in Arabic or Hebrew or English, or it certainly would be different in Japanese in the Shinto tradition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's the same thing. If you look at Zen, what would you call them? Aphorisms.
Yes.
They're all just to wake up, buddy. And if you do, instant enlightenment, at least according to the Jana Chan Zen
Yes.
approach to enlightenment.
That's why the lightning school, they call it.
Yeah, or the Sudden School, same thing.
Yes. Yes.
They say that all of us are enlightened, we just don't know it.
Don't know it yet.
Yeah. So the Black Lodge consists of, it's not, they employ lowlifes, but they are not lowlifes themselves. They are, in fact, also beings that have transcended the human, but have reached a point where they have been, pardon me, George Lucas, been seduced by the dark
by
side.
The dark side. That's right.
And that's a tale you can get throughout human history. People who start out and with a certain amount of power,
yes,
comes corruption, as Lord Acton said. And the Black Lodge, once they attain enough to become essentially immortal beings, instead of helping humanity, they fall for something that you will see in perfectly corporeal organizations. The drunkenness of power has so seduced them, they don't want anybody else to make it to their level, because they are the lords of the what Aleister Crowley called the city of the pyramids.
Wow.
And therefore, they have taken all of these forces from, I don't know, from the Nazis to, well, I don't want to name any contemporary things, because I think the book is careful about that. We bring it right up to date.
Yes.
But not naming names, because I don't want anybody throwing,
exactly,
throwing rocks at the wrong house, which is
right. That's right.
Or even the right house. That's not.
That's right. That's right.
So that would be the real disclosure. So,
which is sounding like, yes, it would. Which is what this sounds like from the Gnostic perspective. These people, right, are like the embodiment. Okay. There you go.
Yes. I'm sorry, brother. I shouldn't have done that.
That was good. Nah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, when I first read that, and I don't read Coptic, but I do read English sometimes.
Yes.
With a reasonable amount of literacy. When I first read on the hypostasis of the archons from the retrieved Gnostic Gospels from that same historical period as the Dead Sea Scrolls. So there is, that's not coincidence, I'm sure.
Right.
A better translation would be the source of the rulers. Hypostasis, archon means rulers. And once you read it in that with that title, it makes a lot more sense. It is talking about the Black Lodge in its primal form. And they were written 2,000 years, maybe more ago.
Maybe more.
Because the reason I say that is what we have was dug up by, I think, a shepherd, similar to what happened with the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Dead Sea Scrolls, right.
Yeah. The Bedouin go to places that nobody else goes, because they, until very recently, and some still, are nomads. And nomads have their own trade routes to avoid contact with
That's right.
the people that fell off the camels. Is actually a term in Arabic that I learned as a kid when traveling with Sheikh Suleiman in the Negev. But anyway, he had 100 wives. I think he was trying to do his namesake Solomon one better.
Yeah, he's trying to live up to it. Wow.
Never saw them. I only saw the guys.
Only saw the guy.
Yeah.
Let me ask you. I mean, when you were speaking about the Black Lodge, and man, first of all, this is very fascinating. But let me tell you the image that popped in my head. as a manifestation or possible, and I want to ask you your thoughts about it, possible manifestation of the Black Lodge, or an event orchestrated, Spanish Inquisition.
Of course. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone that participated in it was part of in knowing accomplice of the discarnate Black Lodge. Some probably, Black Lodge won't hesitate to use visionary experiences. Old Bishop Jones or Jose, kill the Moors, kill the Jews. Okay.
Woo! Right.
Well, it came straight from the angel Gabriel. Yeah, right. But some of them, I think, were knowing on the take from the some of the inquisitors.
Yes.
Torquemada, in particular, probably
Torquemada.
were conscious agents of the Black Lodge of that period. And of course, they were very interested. Let me tell you what I think the Black Lodge wants.
Okay.
If they can't get a nuclear war, which is their modern, they would like to see what is the best way you can assure that no other sentient beings, at least from this world, will ever attain. Blow them all up. Cut the bloodline. And so as of 1945, they began to think in terms of, well, we need to set one against the other. They have no ideology except themselves, but they are just fine with setting West against East,
correct,
Christian against Jew, whatever.
Correct. Yes.
And their more traditional role was to sabotage the development of spiritually enlightened civilizations. And Spain at that time, or just prior to that time, was a golden age for Christians, Jews, and Muslims.
That's a fact.
That is a fact that even critics of any one of the three will tell you.
That's right.
And it was in the interest of the Black Lodge to sabotage that. So what better than to use one of the religious groups?
That's right.
To set against the others. And ultimately that led to the expulsion of Muslims and Jews. And also any that stayed had to convert to Christianity.
That's right.
Which, of course, shattered their lives. In fact, they say, and I'm not sure that this is true, they say that, and I'm not going to be over hard on Spinoza because I think he had a lot on the ball and didn't deserve to be excommunicated. But the fact is that the Jewish conversos, that is, those who converted to Christianity by day, but practiced Judaism by night.
That's right.
However, they were cut off from the Jewish world from that point on. And a couple hundred years later, I may be skewing the history slightly, but Spain at that time ruled the Low Countries.
Yes.
So a lot of the conversos went to Holland, which had an existing Jewish community that was part of the worldwide Jewish community.
That's right.
They were appalled because it looked as if what they thought they were doing at great cost to themselves was not what the Jews of Holland were doing. Rightly or wrongly, it was just different interpretations.
It was different.
But it led to a certain cynicism on part of that community. I imagine some of them were assimilated into the local Jewish community, only to be deported to Germany in World War II. But that's another sorry-ass story. Pardon my French. Or is that Italian? I don't know. It's probably German.
Right.
So that cynicism, according to what is her name? Former nun. She writes books about religious topics. I think she's what is her name? The Case for God is one of her books, which, well, I can't think of her name right offhand, but she says the source of atheism as it is expressed today is directly derived from the conversos who just basically, in finding that they had been for 100, 200 years following a religious basis that in their view was disillusioning. Some became agnostic or atheists, and supreme of them all would be Baruch Spinoza.
Wow.
Who was not an atheist, but he was God embedded in reality.
Yes.
And that was that the Jews of Amsterdam didn't cotton to that, so they excommunicated him, and he died young, which is unfortunate because he was a brilliant man. And there has been a lot of effort to, well, not revive him. That would be that would be a tough one. Roll away that stone, Lazarus, and you too, Baruch. Come on out.
That's right.
So that's a tragedy, but it is, according to her, the source of what we call atheism today. In antiquity, they called the Jews atheists because when the Romans broke into the temple, there wasn't an idol.
There wasn't an idol. That's right. So they said they're godless. That's right.
Godless people. It's throughout the Greco-Roman literature from that point on.
Yes, correct. So listen, let's talk about your book. First, I mean, for the listeners or the viewers who don't know you or don't know your work, listen. And I've said this in the last interview. Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts changed my life. It really did. It really changed my life, and I mean, it changed my life. You know, for the listeners who are not familiar, you know, Allen Greenfield made a very, very bold statement with the book. You know, he says, "Hey, I have cracked the code that is currently being used between earthbound humans and the secret chiefs, those behind the UFO UAP phenomena, and in a way that allows you to involve yourself and integrate yourself within the phenomena itself." And I bear witness. I bear witness, you know, to the point where myself and at least one of my colleagues have done work similar to your friend Terry Wrist. We just didn't go as far. We just didn't go. We didn't knock on any doors, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I don't even know if Terry's still alive. He was older than me, and I'm older than God. 6 years older than Methuselah. So, but if he is, I don't know that he went all that far. He just riffed off of what those of us who were affiliated with QBLH, and some of us who tried to be both OTO and QBLH, we're trying to do, which was to make discoveries for using the cipher, which brings me to a point about both the Black Lodge and the Secret Chiefs. They both have an interest in organized human beings in various configurations, be they spiritual traditions or be they criminal enterprises or governmental or loudmouths like QAnon.
Yes.
There are lots and lots of places where they're interested for one reason or another.
Gotcha.
Disinformation is one with the Black Lodge, and helping people to develop is one of the tasks of the secret chiefs. And they do that through various means. One of those means is in a very non-sectarian way, in my opinion.
Yes.
They produce living corporeal human beings who are several steps away from the rest of humanity. And those are the great teachers of humanity in various traditions. It's kind of the source of the whole messianic notion. Although if you go back to the Hebrew term is Mashiach, which means it means deliverer or
anointed.
Yes, anointed is but one is anointed only when one becomes the messenger of God, the gods, whatever the particular.
Yes.
And they produce it periodically throughout history. And these are the, years ago, many years ago, the Amorc Rosicrucians, one of the claimants to that tradition, used to run ads and say, "Be like these men." They were in all the big magazines of that period. They're gone with magazines altogether, but and the men that they had, Isaac Newton, and it was just a collection of major figures in history. Well, that was kind of pulled together a little bit by the Canadian psychiatrist Dr. Buck, who thought these people spontaneously arise due to evolution. And his book on the subject, a flawed book, but an important one, was 1901, I think. And he died shortly thereafter. Sort of like Dr. Atkins, he fell down.
Yeah, he fell down. Yeah.
On the ice.
Yeah. Wow. What you're saying brings to mind something that Crowley said in his postcard to initiates. And I'll read, one of the theorems. He said the world progresses by virtue of the appearance of Christs or geniuses. Geniuses are men with superconsciousness of the highest order. Superconsciousness of the highest order is obtainable by known means. Therefore, by employing the quintessence of known methods, we cause the world to progress.
Exactly. And of course, he was informed by a secret chief who called itself
IWAS.
Possibly the same or a very similar being that showed up when Malcolm X was in prison and that caused essentially his religious conversion, which was a major thing, because before that he was a different sort of guy.
Correct. But again, very what you just said a few minutes prior, right? About certain individuals being selected for special missions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's exactly the case, and it happens over and over again. I'm pretty sure there's a Black Lodge equivalent of that, but that would be more secretive,
Yes.
And I'm not going to talk about any current political candidates, but by their fruit you shall know.
You shall know. Yes.
Hopefully people will recognize.
Brother, it calls to mind, not to wax too religious, But in the book of Revelations, there's a particular beast that has a wounded head, and then the head is miraculously healed. And then everybody's like, who can make war with? All right, I'll leave it alone.
It's man, all the color orange, in my opinion.
Woo. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So we're talking about your book, the first book, Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts. If you don't have the book, people, get the book, please. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't like to sound like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go.
I don't mean to sound like I'm pushing my books. The best I can do is offer and then, hope that the tiny check I get from the government every month gets supplemented a bit by, but if you want to start with Secrets of the Real Black Lodge Revealed, which is the current book, you can. It's a standalone, but it is the last of a trilogy that started with Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts, proceeded to Secret Rituals of the Men in Black, and now assumes kind of that people are alert to what the secret chiefs are and what the Black Lodge is, but want to know specifics, and that's what the current book is. So one would profit, P-R-O-F-I-T, from reading the two predecessor books, all of which are in print. So, but you can read it standalone, and also I don't have anything to do with publishing or printing or proofreading because those are not my things. I write, I investigate, and I write. But this is the only one of my books that the publishers, in their infinite wisdom, have made available in a Kindle edition from Amazon.
Oh, wow. There you go.
So it's a lot less expensive, and that's fine with me. I think the price of books today is insane.
It is, absolutely. Listen, brother, you put me on, and I'll share this with the viewers, of course. You're the one that pointed me in a particular direction around the year. What year was that? As a matter of fact, it was 2001. To a particular order. And the head of that order had made a particular statement in a book about Egyptian Rite Freemasonry, its structure, right? And that structure being akin to, if not it, the navigation and propulsion system for UFO, right? Woo! And
the structure of the secret chiefs.
Ooh. Wow.
We're talking about Michael Bertio.
Absolutely.
The greatest living magus, as far as I can tell, of people that I've encountered.
Yes, sir.
He may not think that much of me, but I think the world of him.
Yes, sir.
And the reality
he likes you. I spoke with him recently. He has a lot of respect for your work.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because you never know, and he has had his favorites and his unfavorites. But
absolutely,
I don't go by what he thinks of me. I go by what I think of him, and I think he's way ahead of any of us that I know. There may be hidden people. I was on my way to meet Krishnamurti, and he had the bad taste to die on me.
Right.
He would have said, that doesn't make any difference.
Right. He would have said that. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
He would have said that. But he may have said that, actually. Don't let Greenfield come here. I'm going to die instead.
Right. I'll just die.
No, he would have said, who?
Right. But this guy, with this, where I was going with that, the whole structure of the order, him making the connection between that and a propulsion and navigation system for a UFO. Later, in his readings and teaching, in line with that, he speaks about, and this is powerful to me, philosophies as engines to induct energies from the higher realms down to 3D. Mm-hmm. So philosophy as a blueprint for,
yeah,
man, wow.
Mm-hmm. We'll I don't know if this is going to ever be recognized by the greater world, but it
mm-hmm.
should, because mm-hmm. we are called to steal a term.
Yes.
We are not just magicians, we are technicians of the sacred.
Technicians of the sacred.
And that is an evolutionary path which I would encourage.
Yes.
Because that is where I think we're going. But that doesn't originate with me. As such, it originates with Dr. Michael Video.
Right.
When I read the little section that said, as strange as, and I'm paraphrasing,
yes,
strange as it might seem,
right,
this strange order of Freemasonry,
there you go,
under the name Memphis and Mitzrayim,
that's right,
is in reality, and then it goes into exactly what we're talking about.
Yes.
And I read that, and I read it again, and I read it again, and it just opened up a whole line of thought.
Yes.
Sent me to the Zotherian universe for a moment.
Yes.
The only other thing I'm going to say about Dr. Bertio is when I met him. Well, prior to that, I had reached a point where I thought that just as with the I Ching and to a lesser extent with the tarot, by creating randomness and freezing the moment, one can, with great confidence, understand the moment. Everything about the moment, not just what you're reading about, but everything about the moment.
Yes.
And I therefore put on my altar a set of D&D dice.
That's right.
And I thought, how novel. Nobody else does this. So through a series of miraculous things, which is a long story, I wound up in Chicago visiting with Dr. Bertio.
Yes.
With my then friend, John Crow. And I see on his mantle a set of D&D dice.
D&D dice.
And it was like, this is 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I don't know, early 1990s, 1991 maybe.
Yes.
Help me here. 01, 11, 21, over 30 years ago.
Yes.
Math is not my strong suit. I'm a humanities person, okay?
There you go. There you go.
If it weren't for lexicon, I would have never, ever discovered the broadening properties outside of immediate occult concerns of the secret cipher embedded in Liber Legis, one of many sacred books developed in modern times and probably sourced with the secret chiefs.
Shout out to Timothy. How do you pronounce his last name? Coute. There we go. Yes.
He was from upstate New York, and
that's right.
And was a brilliant, brilliant guy who was maybe too good for this world.
Yeah.
And he went young, and I can't talk about that too much because some of it gets into things going on with his living descendants, but it's really, really,
got you.
you know.
Wow.
But he was the powerhouse in QBLH, other than the interestingly named WW Webb.
WW Webb. That's right. That's right.
And
That is correct.
they were the people that brought the cipher to my attention as an occult cipher. And then because of the program that Tim Couttet invented, the lexicon program, which I think it's safe to say now, he was working at a Ford Motor plant in upstate New York.
That's right.
And had access to the computers because
that's
what
right.
he did.
That's
And
right.
he once told me, you know, for all I know, lexicon is still running in the background on the mainframe.
On the main. Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
But he developed it into a program that you could put on a floppy disk.
That's
And
correct.
one of your associates, immediate
Yes.
associates, and a person I empowered
Yes.
directly,
Yes.
who empowered you directly, since we
Yes.
never seem to get together, no matter
I
how
know.
hard we try.
That's right.
He has a copy of lexicon, and I've
Yes,
been
he
looking
does.
for years because if it can be put in modern media,
Yes.
it would be
Listen,
great to put that out on the internet.
it's so crazy because I'm the one that gave him his copy.
Oh, well,
And he still, I don't have it anymore, but he does.
neither do I. See,
Yeah.
that what happened with me, rightly or
Mm.
wrongly, is when IBM XTs became archaic, and of course we have a rapidly moving technology,
Yes.
I didn't have any place to plug floppy disks in.
Gotcha.
So at some point, I transferred what I could, because
Yes.
I'm not a techie, because
Right.
math is not my subject,
Right.
to a digital media, sometimes through several different, like the kid pictures of my eldest son were on VHS.
Yes.
And I thought, the day will come when I can no longer plug in VHS. So I got a converter to digital, and that stuff is, you know, I have it.
Mm-hmm.
And the same is true of a lot of things, but I did not preserve lexicon because I could always get it from Tim.
Right.
And that was my sin, my mistake.
Yes.
One of several. It's like the second Atlanta Pop Festival, which was one of the last of the open air things prior to Altamont. It had Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix in a very famous performance that is preserved by a private person that's out there now, and Jim Morrison. And I said, I can see those people anytime.
Right.
This was 1970, 71.
Right.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
Remember, they are mortal.
They are mortal. That's right. That's correct.
So
listen, there's a topic that I've been wanting to pick your brain on since the last time we talked. Right. You know, the mainstream as it relates to this whole UFO UAP phenomenon are of course stuck on the tech. Right? They're pretty much stuck or mesmerized on the tech, you know, actual flying vehicles and things of that sort. I think I did mention to you, if not, I'm mentioning it now. You have a new fan, and that is Hal Puthoff, one of the nerds that save physics. And so, yeah, he asked about your book. I sent him a link to your book, but he wrote a paper not too long ago called ultra-terrestrial models. And I asked him what motivated him to write this paper. First of all, the paper's amazing. And I asked him what motivated him to write the paper. He said that in the mainstream, there's too much focus on the tech and not the intelligence behind the tech. I was like, wow. So I say all that to say this. You had made mention of something that's not talked about much, that, you know, I'm a quantum biology. What is your
it's the coming thing.
Yes, let's talk about it.
Quantum physics should change the perspective on what I call nuts and bolts thinking, because clearly we barely exist in the nuts and bolts universe that we have fashioned ourselves.
That's right.
Materialism is a choice, and it's not a very good choice. And to get beyond that is a very important thing. Well, with the birth of quantum physics now coming on 100 years ago, that should have been the source of a revisionist view of the nature of reality. It wasn't, because physics circles, well, they're not closed, but let's just say they're ingenious geeks.
Yes.
And ingenious geeks, they're tend to be internalized. Reminds me of the hardcore science fiction fans back in the day, who, it was all guys, because no girls were interested in it, or they were scared to come into a heavily male atmosphere or whatever. I mean, you know, nobody. And I think the same is true of the physics community.
Yes.
Still, perhaps not as much as it was 30, 40 years ago, but still is a Ivy Tower academia-oriented thing. I was reading something just this morning about the discovery of Homo naledi, which caused a great burst of interest, because it sort of implies that spirituality is not confined to modern humans. And I thought, well, after this, the deluge, because all of the usual skeptics will be finding reasons to dismiss the findings from this eminent team of anthropologists and paleoanthropologists. And also, they say the discovery of Homo naledi, they have skeletons and local witnesses. And so today's thing, about 2 months ago, I saw this coming. There was a thing on YouTube, the barometer of the world, that said something like, well, you can't believe this without further proof. And I thought, yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Nobody's been in this cave where they found these skeletons, and the writing on the wall and the hand tool, which I've seen in hundreds of different places.
Right.
Next to the hand of a child that probably scratched these marks on the wall. But be that as it may, it just happened to fall there from.
Right.
So it was one of those podcasts that just says. And I thought, well, they're going to get together and put out a paper that says, don't look here, folks. There's nothing here to look at.
Nothing to see. Right.
And this morning, it was reported in the general media. A paper is coming out that refutes. That's the headline. I looked at the content, and it was the same thing these people were saying 2 months ago. None of them have been there. none of them have anything but speculation. That doesn't prove or disprove anything. So far, all you have is the team that went in, again, immaculate credentials, that reached these conclusions, which, more evidence is called for, and other independent witnesses certainly should go in.
Yes.
But the evidence of absence
is not the absence of. Come on, man. Listen, yeah. There was this one whistleblower. I believe was it. I can't remember who it was. He was talking about. Actually, he's not a whistleblower. Well, he kind of is. Pete Peterson is his name, scientist, and he was talking about there being ads out on the internet advertising to recruit professional debunkers.
Well, they're getting desperate, which brings me to quantum biology. Okay? Yes. Biology is a science that directly affects all of us.
Yes.
Biologists aren't just biologists. Biology would include physicians of various sorts, and would be of concern to legislators, would be of concern to individuals who remember that they are mortal.
And to pharmaceutical companies.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure they're not controlled or at least influenced by the other side. But
the other side, yes.
Let's assume that there are decent people who are working on medications, along with some very indecent people who want to give everybody no pain.
That's right.
Forever.
Take
this and don't worry.
That's right.
People who haven't read Aldous Huxley, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Keep them doped up and you can rule the world.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So the question I wanted to ask, one of the questions I want to ask you about quantum biology is, what do you see or feel is, here's a better way to ask it. Do you feel that or believe that magic has, or can play a role in quantum biology?
Oh, absolutely. The clue is something out of parapsychology, which is that there hasn't been nearly enough of this, primarily because academic parapsychologists don't get much funding. It's usually a handful of people. The guy that invented Xerox made generous donations, and I believe left in his will a major donation to establish a chair at the University of Virginia, which a lot of the best stuff on parapsychology comes out of UVA. And that is because of a few people who have funded that research. The reality is that the development of new forms of plastic probably is funded by hundreds of times greater than any funding for parapsychology or anything.
Absolutely.
But one of the areas that parapsychologists have looked into, quite reasonably in my view, is the phenomenon known, I think, slightly incorrectly, as faith healing, or psychic healing, or healing through various energies that are not acknowledged as part of the table of elements.
Correct.
And
that's right.
The fact is that there have been double-blind and even triple-blind experiments. I'll describe one, and it's not just theoretical, it is based on an actual one, but I'll disguise it a little because I don't have it right in front of me. And the same people who want homonality not to be documented are going to say, well, you see, this guy just makes it up as he goes along. Where is the paper? I don't know. I
Right.
got a closet full of stuff, and it's like why? Why did you stop being a street radical, Allen? Because I got too old to run from the cops.
There you go.
Well,
That's
I'm
right.
too old to clean out my closet, so.
Yeah.
But it's probably that report is in there somewhere, like a lot of
Yes.
other important things. One of these days, I'll con somebody into helping me, meaning I
Helping
sit
you.
there and say, do that, open
There you
that.
go.
There it is, the Ark
That's
of
right.
the Covenant. And
Ark
I
of the
thought it
Covenant.
was in Ethiopia. Okay.
Right.
Don't touch it, boy.
Exactly.
It's electrical.
Yep. Yep.
This is
Yeah.
Solomon calling God. Solomon calling God. Over.
Right.
This is God. What do you want
What do
this
you
time?
want?
The Egyptians are at my door.
That's right.
Can you do something?
Can you help me
You could
out?
run. You could run. I advise running. Heaven
That's
knows
right.
I ran from Egypt. So.
So yeah, this paper. Oh yeah, that's it. The paper that you were talking about, or the report. You said what was it speaking on again?
It was speaking to the
Yes.
concept of faith or psychic healing.
Yes.
Slightly different, but in this particular case, well, I'll give you the setup.
Yes.
The setup was that under a doctor's supervision, volunteers had a surgical cut made on their hands. It was a superficial cut, but it was not just a scratch, it was a cut. That, in turn, this was done by a physician who had no knowledge of what was going to be done with it. I mean, he could have made a guess.
Right.
There was a second party to which the physician would refer the, I don't know whether to call him a client or sucker or the person. And all that they were told was, we're doing an experiment with a heat lamp that we want to know if it hastens healing. So
got you.
They would go and check in with this second person who also didn't know anything other than what they were instructed to do. That
Correct.
was line number 2.
Yes.
So the person was told, and there were, I don't know how many were in the experimental group, but enough to have a statistically meaningful result. They were told that there was a slot that they could stick the wounded hand in, and the heat machine would be behind that. And then they would go back to the doctor on a periodic basis to photograph and know the speed with which they healed. So you've got, now there's one other element. The other element was there is no heat machine. Sometimes there was nothing. That was your control thing.
That was the control,
Sometimes there was a healer just sitting in a chair. Sometimes there was a healer sitting in the chair who prayed for the person to heal. In the case of the nothing being there, it was statistically insignificant. The healing was what you would expect from a cut of that sort.
Yes.
With the healer present, and also the healer didn't know the purpose of the experiment. They were just recruited as experts in their own area and say, well, this person, their hand has a cut on it. Would you?
Got you.
wish it well or pray for it.
Right.
In the case of the wishing it well, there was a statistically significant number of hits. That is,
Yes.
it was
Yes.
noticeable to the doctor that it was healing faster than the control group, i.e.
Mm.
the group that there was nothing behind the curtain. So
Interesting. Very interesting.
The group that prayed had a much more significant
Powerful. 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 Powerful.
Yeah. So if that isn't a clue as to quantum biology and where it might go, yes. I don't know what is.
You know something about my personal practice in the Chinese martial arts.
Yeah.
Sure. Chinese medicine is real medicine. But anyway, so and speaking of Chinese medicine, my particular martial art tradition has a very heavy emphasis on classical Chinese medicine. Classical meaning pre-communist era Chinese medicine. So my older training brother is a therapist, a Qigong therapist. He teaches a course, a medical Qigong course. It's a 5-module course, and at the end is a written and a practical test. I'll describe one of the 2 practical sides of the test. One of them is this. You get 2 cups, pour wine from the same bottle into both cups. You get a taste tester to test, make sure it's the same wine. The person being tested now has to project their energy into one of the cups for 60 seconds to change the pH content of the wine. Then the taster tests again to tell the difference. And it's either pass or fail. Yeah. Every single one of my students that took the test passed.
There you go.
Yes.
That is altering reality through the power of mind.
Yes.
And there may be, I'm sure that Reiki masters are using a similar technique. The basis of acupuncture is a similar technique and a similar notion. Even acupressure and arguably chiropractic are working with some of the same energies. And, if I may, the puisha that we work with in the magical work that I do is,
I'm so glad you said that.
The same thing.
I'm so glad you said that because I've had a long time, of course, I'm a lifelong martial artist. I've practiced for a long time, but it was because of you in particular, conversations you and I have had over the years that enabled me to, at least for myself and my own understanding, pierce that veil between philosophical magic and operative. And it basically being human bioenergetics or quantum biology.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as the notions involved in quantum physics are applied, as they are being to some extent, to biology, you begin to have that same thing that existed in physics, the ephemeral nature of reality, therefore the malleable reality. If reality is not fixed, then the power of will can move it.
Yes.
And that's what magicians have been doing since the year 2. Not in the year 1, they had to learn a little bit,
Yes.
But since the year 2, that is what magicians have been doing. And shamans. And a whole host of people who could be called healers. And I even think the best medical doctors are also healers. Israel Regardie was a chiropractor, and he, but he contemplated the use of chiropractic as part of energy medicine.
Interesting.
And considering the fact that, he had been deeply immersed in magic, I think he was probably, I wasn't one of his patients, but he's probably one of using a lot of that under the I don't want to make this sound sinister, but under the cover of chiropractic,
Yes.
because there is broad resistance to homonality and
Yes.
also to alternate
That's a
forms of
fact.
healing.
That is a fact. Here, Dr. Robert Becker, who he wrote the book The Body Electric. And his research funding got cut because, you know, he was doing research on the big question he was asking was, is the human body able to regenerate organs and limbs? And the short answer, based on his research, is yes. But it has everything to do with modulation and amplification of the body's bioenergy. And here's something they found really interesting in the course of their research. I never heard of it. I almost threw the book when I read it in the book. You know how you have stem cells. Stem cells are undifferentiated cells. They could be made into brain tissue, red blood cells, white blood, whatever, right? Well, he discovered, listen to this, he discovered the possibility, hence reality, of de-differentiation. How a brain cell or a blood cell or what can be turned into a stem cell and then reassigned.
That has to be true.
Yes.
Because unless physics is all, as we say in Yiddish, verkachte, a word that translates itself, then we have to say that at the quantum level, reality is ephemeral.
Yes.
And our take on reality that we're doing right now, even though I'm sitting here and you're sitting there, we are in fact just communicating through a series of electrons running along a wire or something like that. I mean,
something like that. That's right.
And the reality is that once you accept that, I mean, you're worried about AI being used to, cause politicians to say, well, what I'll do is imprison the Pope and and they say, I didn't say that. Well, it shows you saying it. Your mouth.
It shows you saying it. Those are your lips are moving.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's right. Not my lips. That's somebody.
Right. But it's amazing. See, wow. And that brings me to my last question, that we're talking about a different take on reality, whereas we all were brought up in a world and brought up in a worldview that the more tangible a thing is, the more real it is, when actually that's backwards.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, whew, we started talking about disclosure, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've read and I've heard for long times about why the government doesn't want to give disclosure, right, is, well, we don't want to cause the public to panic and blah, 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 blah. And one of the major issues they talk about as it relates to that is the total disruption, or what they say will be the total disruption of religious creeds.
That may be a concern, but I don't think I think the government is indifferent to that. Yes. I think that the government is interested in power for its own sake, particularly now. I mean, there have been people who have chosen to go into government along the line that are civic minded, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
But they don't even teach civics in public schools anymore.
How about that?
And I don't know whether that's true in private schools, Catholic schools, whatever. But the fact is, it's gone out of fashion. So people don't really even know how, let's say, presidential elections are actually decided.
They don't know.
Nor have they ever read the Constitution of the United States and found out how old it is.
Right.
And how many times it's been amended, and how difficult in the present it would be to amend the amendments. It's just,
Correct.
it's the oldest constitution in the world.
That's right.
I mean, we can't count the Magna Carta. It's not really a constitution.
Right.
The British Constitution refers not to a document, but to an agreed to order of things.
Ooh.
Well, we don't have an agreed to order of things because clearly there are judges who will see it one way and judges who will see
We'll
it
see it another way. That's right.
This morning, I was watching for the 10th time Judgment at Nuremberg, which was focused on the trial of the Nazi judges.
Yes.
And of course, it was American judges sitting in judgment of the German judges who had continued to be judges during the Nazi era. And it really is a movie. I first saw it with my parents, and my father came out of it and he said, I thought at first it was really going to say they were innocent. And my mother said, I think they had to, when they got down to the level, they had to raise the philosophical arguments.
Yes.
What was the alternative in Germany at that time? Could you have spoken up and not gotten hanged or whatever? But the conclusion of the movie made it very clear because Spencer Tracy could convince anybody to take off their pants and run down the street.
Right.
He had the gift of oratory.
Yes.
And especially in his latter days, in Inherit the Wind, Judgment Nuremberg,
right,
a host of films right up to literally the posthumous Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yes.
That was his last. And I think he had already passed when that came out. Just a side thought.
Yes.
What's scary to me is how many classical movies that I enjoyed when they were new, that everybody in the cast is dead now.
Right. But hey, listen, it's before we got on, before we started recording, we're just talking about just, especially, it's just a good thing to be on this side of the grass, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know what's on the other side. It might be better.
Might be better. How about that? Which brings me back again. This, the whole thing of reality and, the ideal, the notion that the truth about reality is that the less corporeal it is, the more real it is.
Oh yeah,
you know.
I mean, you should certainly look both ways when you cross the street.
Yes.
Or you will have a close encounter of a tragic kind.
That's right.
Except in New York City, where
Yes.
So you have to have a regard for that level of things, the foundation.
Yes.
But having said that, that is the lowest level. That's where the Etz Chaim, the tree of life, is based, and that is the base. That is not the
Isn't
heights.
that something?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that the Big Bang is happens in Malkuth, right?
Yeah. Well.
Wow.
It's something that I think is sufficiently transformative to realize.
Yes.
By the way, I wanted to say one word about Qigong. Which,
yes.
I think I may have told you this story before at some point, but way, way, way back in the day, it was probably with wife number 3.
Yeah.
She whose name I do not utter, for to name is to invoke. She dragged me to this, what turned out to be kind of a singles meeting spot. Not quite a swingers club, but
Right. Yeah.
intermeshing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I go, so they give me the little hello name tag. I was not real
Yes.
happy to be in this environment. So I
Right.
just put end user, a quadruple entendre for those who are into that sort of thing. Anyway, we were primarily or supposedly there to find my friend John a girlfriend, which he found, who he married, and
Wow.
who divorced.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sitting at a table basically trying to be as small and inconspicuous as I
Yes.
could. And a
Yes.
guy walks up to me, and I thought he was drunk, and he probably was.
Right.
He says, I do Li Gong. And I said, oh, really? He might as well have said, whatever. Because,
Right.
I mean, I had been in the occult slash OTO slash UFO world. He could have said he was from Venus, and I would have said, whatever. Isn't it hot there? I had
Yeah, it's
nothing.
pretty hot there.
And he said, you don't believe me. And I said, uh, whatever. I'm not going to
Okay.
get in a
Yeah.
fight with a drunk who's standing over me and I'm sitting down.
Right.
So he said, I will project heat from my hand and I want you to feel it. So, okay, whatever.
All right.
So he projects, and there is a clear, energetic heat that goes
Yeah.
well beyond body heat.
Yes.
And I thought, well, something to this.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
a small story, but that was
Yeah, man.
an important, because this drunk obviously had enough
You had
presence
something.
of mind that he could focus enough and had enough training that he could produce. I don't know if he could produce anything more than that, but that
Right.
clearly was
Very
carried
nice.
out to a logical end. That would be a
Yeah.
heat ray, like a Marvel superhero, which
That's right.
I
That's
tend
right.
to I tend to avoid people with capes, but
Yes. You had the thought that just came to me was something you wrote about was an encounter, and I'm trying to remember if it was Blavatsky that they had the encounter or one of her associates that had the encounter with in India with the Master KH.
I believe that was Colonel Olcott, her
Colonel Olcott, that's right. Yes,
her
yes,
immediate entourage. Yeah,
yes. And how he caused something to materialize
right.
in his
Uh,
hand. Yes.
um, assuming that Colonel Olcott wasn't gilding the lily,
You're right.
and I think they were pretty sincere people. They got
Yes.
out of Egypt after uh, Palace Metaman basically expelled them from the HBL for, I think, some of
Ah,
their semi-phony seances. So,
really? I didn't know that. But go ahead. Yeah, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
well, it's not in the theosophical official documents, but
Obviously.
the
Yes.
HBL has preserved that uh, uh, encounter.
Mm,
And I think they decided that it was time to amscray from Egypt,
yes.
as my mother would
That's
put it.
interesting. That's
And
interesting.
they got into Indian nationalism and their version of the secret chiefs.
Mm,
And I believe that their encounters with the chiefs, which would have been like in India, maybe known as the Nine Unknown or whatever, which
right.
had a Black Lodge version and a Secret Chiefs version. The
Right.
Ascended Masters, not all of which are good guys.
Right.
But they had had several encounters of that sort. And Colonel Olcott was out in the sticks somewhere
Mm,
in a tent.
yes.
And Master Cage, Kuthumi, probably an assumed name that would lend itself
Yes.
to the cipher,
Yes. Yes.
um, was being asked, okay, so do something for me. I'm sure it was much more Victorian British polite as he
Yes.
put it, but he said,
Yes.
okay, want to see me pull a rabbit out of a hat?
My hat. Here you go.
And Materialization, if it happens just independently,
right,
clearly is a magical act. But of
yes,
course, they didn't think in terms of magic. They thought in terms of whatever it is the
right,
theosophists try to teach. I don't know.
right, right.
And so, one day they're communicating with the dead, and the next day they're seeing ascended masters, which they
Mm-hmm.
claim were not ascended. They
Mm.
claim, oh, they were just people that wrote us postcards and blah, 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 blah. Well, they could assume that identity, but clearly
Absolutely.
the things that they were doing
Yes.
probably had very little to do with the Theosophical Society as such, and probably had more to do with inspiring people like Gandhi.
So, see, okay. So you had mentioned something else that really resonated with me years ago in Secret Cipher, the Ufonauts. These individuals, a lot of these individuals, if not all of them, regular human beings, but with some very interesting abilities. And not just for the sake of having those abilities, but they were almost always simultaneously involved in fringe politics. You know, very interesting. And up to the point where aliases sometimes were needed, pseudonyms, you know, which brings me, wow, you had, um, it brings me to, a couple of people. The founder of my religious organization, the things that he did and knew at the time in which he did them. If I don't know if the man slept, I don't know. First of all, just from a mundane perspective, how in the world did he know what he knew at that time? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it really kind of boggles the mind. One of the things, going back to what I just mentioned about Master KH, or what you had mentioned, is that he was known for in the 20s, and especially in Chicago, was healing people. Known, where there were lines of people outside of his home, and people would have to be told, look, he's tired. Come back tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course, in addition to these things and being a spiritual individual, he's touting things that are very, very, very sensitive to the political and social norms of the day. you know, and things that will definitely, if they caught on, change the narrative.
Yep.
You know,
that's certainly true.
yeah,
There seem to be a couple of different types of, as distinct from the secret chiefs, incarnate masters from both the Black Lodge and from the secret chiefs. In other
mm-hmm.
words, influenced by one, influenced by the other, and even a few crossovers that sort of Darth Vader's, they started out one way and they wound up further.
Yes, yes,
My friend Sam, God rest his soul, and we learned magic together. And one of the things we debated a lot was, can a master, in those days we were referring to living
yes,
masters, be
yes,
wrong about anything? I
yes.
think we were focused at that time specifically on Rajneesh, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's like he kept upping the ante.
Yeah,
I mean, 100 Rolls Royces is a challenge for somebody to say, aren't you trying to tell us something about your
right.
own
Yeah,
godhood?
yes,
But,
yeah,
and we decided in an individual case, we weren't in a position to pass judgment, but sure, as long as they're human beings, they can be wrong. They can
Mm-hmm.
be right and they can be wrong. They can be right at
Yes.
the beginning and wrong at. They can be wrong at the beginning and have an epiphany and become right. St. Paul is,
Come on.
your
Yes.
historical example. Um, that being the case, I think that it is useful to realize that the secret chiefs throughout human history,
Mm-hmm.
and probably less of them in primordial times,
Yes.
they have taken an interest in perspective,
Mm.
people to be
Mm.
leaders of one or another group of people,
Yes.
specifically oppressed groups of people, but
Yes.
also people in general who, subject to the, what is it, the phrase, that ills that the flesh is heir to.
Yes.
So that is that kind of oppression is the
Yes.
material world itself.
Yes. That's right.
Um, so there have been occasionally several within the same generation.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, you would find, and this was what Dr. Buck was saying at the end of the 19th century, which was over optimistic in my opinion, but he said
Yes.
there are going to be more and more of these uh,
Mm.
cosmic conscious people because
Mm.
evolution has reached a critical mass. Well, that's what my generation was saying out of the 60s because they all dropped acid and thought they were on the.
That's really interesting that you say that because um one of my favorite guys, one of my favorite, you know, um, of these types of people, Rudolf Steiner, talks about how he talks about from the mystical perspective, Jesus on the cross and the cross being like a phallic symbol going into the ground and Jesus's blood going into the ground and absorbed Adama drinking the blood, and then Christ's coming up,
Which is what
in the
communion is meant to
mm,
participate in, Catholic, or
yes,
remember, Protestant.
right, right, and so now Christs are coming up into the world, you know and
Yep.
that was his idea, and it's like, wow, like as you put in the very beginning, it's the inevitable evolution of humanity.
Yep. It is
Yeah.
inevitable. It can be slow. We're talking
Yes.
about biological time, and
Yes.
that's not sudden. We were talking about, the the mortality of the flesh. Well,
Yes.
why do we care about that if we're spiritual beings? And I can
Come
tell you
on.
why. I had to
Mm-hmm.
figure that out. It took me a long time.
Mm.
We are built, our physical organism is built to survive. It
Yes.
has, take your pick, a billion years of evolution
Yes.
or longer.
Or
And
longer.
because of
Yeah.
that, the body screams, don't die. I mean, Freud discussed this in terms of unicellular organisms. He said evolution began when unicellular organisms wanted to survive more than they wanted to uh, simply sink back into the ether, sort of
Right.
like virtual
Yes.
subatomic particles.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
sometimes they manifest and sometimes they just go
Sometimes they.
back into the
That's right.
whatever, the great
That's right.
whatever.
Into the field.
So, so the fact that we have evolved to the point that we're still here and the dinosaurs aren't
Right.
or we're still here and the Neanderthals sort of are not.
Right. Sort of. Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, that confirms something that Noble Drew Ali was saying, that
Mm.
the two-race theory, because the not to get into that too much detail because that's more your bag than mine, but my degrees are in comparative
Yes.
religion. So, for whatever that's worth.
But you know what's interesting too with that? What you just described, that's literally, you just threw some light for me on that. What you just described about the evolution of the human organism is what he describes, Noble Drew Ali describes in our literature as the carnal nature. And man himself before the fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
That nature became a foe that he had to fight. But falling victim to that nature is what caused the fall. In other words, man's consciousness from non-locality to locality.
Exactly. And that is the way it is. I mean, we all deal with that at a certain level. There will be pie in the sky when we die by and by, maybe. But
maybe.
The flesh says, how can you know that?
Woo,
stay alive. Come on, stay alive. And the spirit says, I know.
Woo.
I know I will. And I know how to manifest.
That's right.
It's very interesting where you were using the word Christ from Christos in the Greco-Roman sense. Christos is derived from Mashiach in Hebrew, which means the anointed, as we said early. Not only were kings anointed, prophets were anointed.
That's right.
Prophets anointed kings.
That's right.
And whenever I've empowered somebody, I anoint them because of what I have received in terms of empowerments.
That's
so what does the original term mean? Well, it means the empowered. Now, that can mean Christ in the common Roman Catholic and Protestant sense.
Yes.
Of that person who was also a God, that duality. Offensive to a lot of people who are of other Abrahamic faiths, but nevertheless, that is the claim. Not his claim, by the way. That's Paul's claim. As far as we know, given that we don't have any Aramaic original, suddenly he was loquacious in Greek.
Right. Correct.
So, what does the term mean? Well, it can mean king. It can mean prophet. It can mean enlightened person.
Yes.
It can also mean something that would be more the equivalent of King Arthur than of the man of peace, than Gandhi, King Arthur. Not on the same page, but both of them inspired. Yes. And I think of the something I sing a lot when I'm not on the air. The Battle Hymn of the Republic, which it's really a very militant song because it was a time that called for bloodshed and militants.
Yes.
And I think Bruce Catton did a book called Terrible Swift Sword, which is a biblical phrase, but it's also he, being God, is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath,
that's right,
Steinbeck, are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. Truth is marching on. That is a fierce God who is essentially more a King Arthur than a Jesus.
Right.
And
wow. We have a saying in the Moorish Science Symbol of America. We said, what does the name Jesus mean? Jesus means justice. Yeah. And it calls to mind the statement in the Bible where it says, say not that I came to bring peace,
but the sword.
Right.
Comparative religion.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Listen, man, on that note, this was an amazing interview. Thank you so much. Again, the new book name.
We argued about the name for a year, but it's Secrets of the Real Black Lodge. Revealed.
Secrets of the Real Black Lodge.
Revealed. And the reason it says the real is because David Lynch and company seem to have some initiated knowledge, and they used it in Twin Peaks to convey the notion of the Black Lodge and what he calls the White Lodge, a term I try to avoid because it sounds like the Klan.
Right.
But the idea is embedded in the fiction, and some people would say, "Oh, you're writing a book about Twin Peaks," and there's a chapter in there that deals with that, but that's
interesting.
Authored by my co-author.
By the co-author, in the book "Secret Time for the UFOnauts," you place emphasis, which I really appreciate, on the use of the color terms. Great White Brotherhood versus Black Lodge. Like, don't play into the whole racial color code classification foolery. And then you mentioned that the Nazi Party was one of the more well-known manifestations of the Black Lodge.
And they called themselves, in the SS, the Death's Head SS, they called themselves the Black Order.
The Black Order, and they follow the Black Sun. And
follow the Black Sun, which is a major feature in the book. It seems like there is a fixation on the sun, and specific. What is a black sun? Well, that's a sun that doesn't give life. It's a sun that radiates death. And it seems like some of the people who were seduced by the Black Lodge are fixated on the notion that may actually be historical, that I don't want to keep you, but that it may be that every once in a while the sun gets sufficiently temperamental that it changes life as we know it on the earth. There's a alternative theory about the coming of the younger Dryas, when the human race was just barely getting off of the ice and trying to build, a little house somewhere. Somewhere in Kenya, perhaps. Well, I was going to say, if you want to talk about displaced people, if you aren't from the Olduvai Gorge and have lived there all of your life, you've displaced somebody.
Exactly. That's right.
So I guess that's a good place to be. Yes.
Well, you real quick. Was there any connection, and this is just me just talking, between the Black Lodge, which you say, and Maria Osric?
Yeah, but that's we need to do another show.
That's another show. You know what? That's the setup.
Tune in again next time.
There you go.
Same bat time. same bat channel.
Oh man, and on that note again, brother, thank you so much, man. And I guess now we have to do a part 3, right?
Sure.
Beautiful. Again, viewers, thank you. This is Gate to the Age. My name is Sharif ANAEL-BEY, and we'll catch you next time. Stop.